You're listening to The Back 40, the podcast for Ontario farmers, covering topics and issues that matter most to Ontario agriculture. Brought to you by Trillium Mutual Insurance, bringing the ag community together one podcast at a time. We're here on the Back 40 today with Marty Seymour. Marty is the Director of Industry Relations for Farm Credit Canada. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, great to be here, Mike. Thanks for having me on today.
So the main reason we want to talk to you today, you've been heavily involved in Canada's Ag Day, which is coming up on February 23rd of this year. I had the opportunity to be involved with that last year, the trip down to Ottawa. But for those of our listeners that aren't familiar with it, can you give us a bit of a background, maybe start with yourself and then tell us a little bit about Canada's Ag Day?
Sure. So for those of you listening that I haven't had a chance to meet, I would humbly say that I have the coolest job in Canadian agriculture. And I work out of FCC's corporate office out in Regina in a formal role we call industry relations. But what my real assignment is, and I have a team of people that we're all doing similar work, is if you think of FCC's business, we're involved in everything from dairy to poultry to greenhouses through to food processing and everything in between. And my team's job is to listen for signals and trends in the industry, whether that's labor, trade, public trust, anything that would impact our farmers in the future of their business or our food processing customers too. And help drive that back into FCC's strategy so that when we show up in the marketplace, that we are bringing products that make sense for our customers. All the learning events are timely and relevant. And so it's kind of a neat place because what it does is it gets me on stages. I do a lot of public speaking, probably 30 events a year for the company, and sit on some boards and committees to help advance some complicated projects like public trust in food. So, which maybe opens the door, gives me the luxury to get to do this fun thing called Canada's Agriculture Day, which is kind of what you asked about why we're here, is my team also is made up of the Ag More Than Ever social media channel, which lots of people listening will have hashtag Ag More Than Ever. And I think we're getting close to 90,000 individual accounts across all the different platforms we have. So I think it's probably the most engaging social platform. And one day we showed up at work and somebody had the idea that this country needs a day called Ag Day to celebrate Canadian agriculture. Now, there's kind of a day for everything, but what was missing was this: how do we pull the industry together to stand proud, celebrate the food we love, and then try to break the echo chamber? And so kind of two pieces of why does Ag Day exist or why does it matter? And that's one, how do we create a community of people that for one day a year can rally around together and say, you know what, this is a pretty cool industry and I'm proud of it. And then to take the volume of that and break the echo chamber so consumers can see it. And this day, from a social media standpoint, has been outstanding. It's been trending number one on Twitter by usually 9 a.m. Ontario time each year as the number one hashtag. And if you're listening, use the hashtag CDN Ag Day on February 23rd and be part of that noise because we love it.
Yeah, it's been a tremendous success. As I said, I had the opportunity to go down to Ottawa last year and attend the conference. Fantastic speakers there. Just a great opportunity to network with other farmers and industry people there. And you're to be commended because it's a terrific show that you've been able to put together.
Yeah. So the conference itself, we'll say 600 people. Interdisciplinary. So I think what makes it unique in Canadian agriculture, there's not too many events where all sectors come together. And so we produce on Ag Day a conference. And in its history, we would meet in person. This year, we're going to do something virtual as expected, but we meet in person. And so we would have people like yourself, Mike, but also we had dairy industry, the canola industry, some food retail involved. And these are people that never get to the same room at the same time. And so what was super interesting to watch was someone from the cattle industry spending some corn grower from Ontario that may never have met together. And they're working on similar things. And the common bond was public trust in food. And so the conference has become kind of the place to be if you're interested in the future of food and where it's heading. We've had some cool speakers over the years that kind of, we're not talking about policy issues or regulatory or scientific findings. We're talking about opportunities and growth and celebrating. And so we get some real thought leaders at the table. And it's been a lot of fun producing this one.
Oh, I can imagine. And just the ability to pick through some of the speakers that you had. I know one speaker that really stood out to me last year was Michael McCain. And he was talking about Maple Leaf Foods going to a carbon neutral. And he said, no, this isn't something that we're aiming for. We're there now. But the real thing that struck me, he said, the reason he did it was not for himself. It was for his grandkids. And I thought that's a really different viewpoint that you just don't hear in the newspaper. And we had I think it was a half an hour we had to listen to him talk about that. And it was a fantastic experience.
Yeah, what Michael shared last year, Michael McCain's belief, his vision for Maple Leaf Foods to be, net zero on carbon is the whole point of this conference and this day is to say, how do we sort of create these quantum leap ideas and introduce people to where food is going. And I commend Maple Leaf. They're way out in front of many organizations. I thought I heard the other day talk about there's 3 international protein companies that could make claims similar to this. And so they are on the front end of this curve. But his ambitions around how we manage carbon. And I also thought what was cool about his argument was how simplified we made this. We can chase efficiency in agriculture and try to improve our business in a million different ways. But he said, if you just focus on carbon and get that right, everything else comes along with it from how you manage your transportation, how you might build a new hog barn, how you might process chicken. It was just interesting to hear such a simplified piece of that. And I know that his message resonated in the room. And the thing I took away from that talk was this idea that there's external dollars, and I think of Microsoft as another example, Maple Leaf would be one, that are willing to buy carbon offsets. And they do them today. Most of the dollars get spent on wind farms and different things that would be traditional green energy, maybe it's solar. But saying, hey, wait a minute, we've got a bunch of dryland grain farms that are sequestering carbon or cattle ranching systems that sequester carbon. How do we take those dollars and put them back into agriculture? So I have an ambition that we take a company like Microsoft that wants to be carbon neutral and is willing to invest in sequestration and say, how do we pull their dollars into agriculture and create net new revenue stream? So I think Michael McCain was on the early edge of introducing this idea to the industry. And in a year, we've seen huge progress in people trying to explore this. And there's lots of companies working on it every day now. But
that's what it takes. It takes someone in a position like what he's in to say, hey, we're going to do this. And to lead that by making his own company carbon neutral and saying, okay, everybody else, now catch up. And people do. I mean, a lot of companies that have never considered it will look at that and say, whoa, we better get on board.
Yeah. So looking at the whole thing through the lens of opportunity. And I know there's parts of the agri-food system that aren't ready for that. Maybe it's how their data is not digitized in a way that they can keep the records that need to do that, or their cost infrastructure doesn't make it low-hanging fruit or even plausible this time. But the whole point of the Ag Day conference and what this is about is to talk about the best things we're doing in the industry, the opportunities in the industry, and get people excited because it's pretty cool industry we've got. And I would say, go through the last 12 months of just COVID. I guess not quite 12 months, but we're approaching the anniversary of when we all started to work from home. The food system is in a pretty good spot as far as everyday Canadians all of a sudden care where their food comes from, asking different or better questions about where their food comes from. So there's good momentum on this topic for the sector too. So we're expecting, Ag Day to be as big as ever this year, even in the absence of a physical conference in Ottawa and doing something virtually. We're in person. We had 600 to 800 people would be kind of on the top end, and then this year virtually, I think we're tracking. We'll see 1,500 people register for our online version. So our reach is bigger and our engagement is outstanding.
That's awesome. And that speaks volumes of where this could go in the future year when we're not all locked in our own little houses here and we're able to get out and shake hands with people again.
Yeah, for sure. Just reflecting on some other fun people we've had speak at this conference is, remember the year that John Betts came. And so imagine a room it's your typical conference room, a bunch of round tables in the room. And we usually have about 100 high school kids participate in the room, and 30 kids from McGill usually come over on a bus to Ottawa to take this in. And then all of the industry, people like yourself and government, et cetera. And there's some good energy in the room, and people are kind of chattering, and you got this formal stage, and John Betts walks up to the room, who's a person lots of people would know, Mr. Betts, but he's the president of McDonald's Canada. When that gentleman got done speaking and walked off the stage, these high school kids swarmed him like he was like some pop star, and couldn't wait to just meet this guy and the selfies they wanted to do. And this line of sight that these young people had getting introduced to jobs in the industry and saying that, hey, John Betts is actually in the agri-food business. He happens to be responsible for one of the biggest food retailers in Canada. He's just a guy, and I could be that. And so that's kind of a cool thing we do at Ag Day too, is by bringing youth to the event, get them excited about the sector. And the industry loves that as well. There'll be 4-H kids throughout the room. There's just, if we can't get the young people there, then we don't think we're winning for Ag Day either.
Well, a lot of the new ideas will come from the next generation, the people that are in high school and college and universities now that have all sorts of great ideas that people like myself that have been in the industry forever, we're looking at that. It wouldn't even occur to us. And we know all the reasons why it won't work. They don't know why it won't work. So they will make it work. It's just, it's the future of the food industry, of agriculture.
Yeah, you use the word idea. That just got me thinking about the birth of Ag Day. So I love this. I used to be the CEO of Canadian Western Agribition. And for a lot of your listening audience, maybe haven't been there, but it's like the Toronto Royal in Western Canada. It's the biggest agriculture show, cattle show in the country. And we would sit around the table and say, what are we going to do for entertainment this year? And somebody would show up with an idea, and boom, it's production. Well, Ag Day came to be very similar. Is one day, one of my colleagues, who prefers to be unnamed because he doesn't want the recognition, shows up at the office and says, I think we need a national day to celebrate this industry. And we all looked at him and said, that'll never work. And he said, no, I think it's a good idea. And I'll bet you within 4 days, we had mobilized a team of people, and we launched the first ever Canada's Agriculture Day. And I think that's what's cool about our industry, is it just takes one person to say, got an idea. You know, we have the good fortune to have FCC's engine minded, and so our network's strong. We have 100 offices and all across the country. And so our ability to activate groups, and my team's responsibility to work with farm organizations like the Grain Farmers of Ontario, for example, or the Canadian Cattlemen. We got everybody around the table, and there wasn't anybody that said they didn't want to be part of this thing. And boom, away we went. And now we got Ag Day.
Do you like what you're hearing from the Back 40? We'd like to hear from you. Send us an email with your comments and thoughts to theback40@trilliummutual.com, or follow us on social media @TrilliumMutual. Agriculture it's so wide-reaching, and it's such an important industry to the economy, to jobs, and it reaches into all parts of life. I mean, we all end up with the 3 meals a day, hopefully, and it affects us every time we open the refrigerator.
Yeah, I've been working on public trust in food for a while now through a couple different jobs I've had, and I think our challenge as an industry is still to figure out how to tell our story in a way that consumers want to digest it. Admittedly, the humbleness of the average farmer to just go out every spring and see their crop, or go out every morning, milk their cows, or catch the chickens. We just weren't talking about what we did. Farmers just didn't do that. We got up in the morning, we ran our businesses, and my family included. And then about 10 years ago, we started to hear people talking about our industry and saying things that we didn't believe were true, maybe not supporting some of the science that modern agriculture says actually it's really good for the planet. And we've spent the last 7 or 8 playing some catch up. Now, I think the industry's got some legs under it, where we're actually doing a pretty good job telling our story. And we know that the Center for Food Integrity's research would say that pesticide use, hormones, some people worried about where their next meal is going to come from would rate high in terms of survey outcomes. But I would say in the last 10 months, this is anecdotal, I don't see near the narrative about people questioning their food safety and whether GMOs are good for me or not. And I'm not here to debate that, and just say as a question, that we're hearing from consumers, it just feels less. Now it's more about how do I support my local farmer? And so to me, the opportunity in front of Canadian agriculture is we have a whole bunch of consumers in Canada that are interested in supporting their neighbor in their business. And that might be their neighbor who sells running shoes, but it's for sure their neighbor that sells food and right back to the farm gate. So we're kind of, the pun intended, but the table set for this industry that use this as a springboard to get in people's hearts and minds. And, if we can do our little part, have an ag day to do that, that's a win.
Yeah, I think that further on what you were talking about, March 13th was my last day in the office. March 14th, my wife and I went shopping into the local grocery store. And for the first time in my life, there were empty shelves. And I don't mean just a few. I mean, there was a lot of empty shelves there. There was no milk, no eggs, and very little meat. And we are just not used to that in this country. And I think that was a huge eye-opener for a lot of consumers that, we take our food for granted, but maybe we shouldn't. We need to know where our food comes from. And then we need to understand that there's a lot of people out there that work really hard to make sure that I've got 3 square meals a day. And we are fortunate to have the kind of variety that we do have in this country.
Yeah, we went to market last spring with a commercial. I can't remember the dates. We'll just say mid-April. And it was a social media effort around this idea that we feed together. And we put a series of videos together, helping the average Canadian see the food system. And that might have been the farmer with the tractor, might have been the dairy person in the barn. But the thing that I liked about that particular video, it was also the food processor and the frontline worker in the processing plant. I farm on the weekend, so I call myself a farmer, but I think it's pretty loose use of the word. But I say for the first time ever, I also recognize that those other people in the food supply chain, the person who's going to work to can or freeze the vegetables I was buying or make the tomato sauce or, work in the packing plant. I just this newfound appreciation for them. And I think the unsung hero was also the trucking industry, because I realized quickly when COVID hit, we started to restrict travel interprovincially and north-south, how fragile we were in terms of trucking. And so, if this year's Ag Day, if we can do anything, is to get people to think of the entire food system, and we'll celebrate farming. But I also think this is a way to make the tent bigger and say this is bigger than just farmers. This is the food system.
So you've talked about getting a lot more people, a lot bigger reach with what we're doing this year. Obviously, as you said, we're not going to be all gathering in one large room in Ottawa. It's going to be virtual. What's different this year as opposed to other years?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. My team of people, we would spend a lot of time working with different organizations on, hey, what are you planning in your local community? And so last year it would have been Customer Appreciation Day at a crop input dealer, and come by for coffee and some banners and some balloons, and it's Ag Day, and just a sense of, hey, thanks for being our customer, and we're going to use Ag Day as a way to do the outreach. Well, we always saw social media as far as last year's campaign was Forks Up for Canadian Ag, and this year we're using the same that had great momentum. But take a picture of yourself with some food on a fork or with your fork, and just let us know it's Forks Up for Canadian Agriculture, and use the hashtag CDN Ag Day. I think this stuff maybe was most fun for me was watching the food companies get involved, and some of these brands that are not really front and center on the data agriculture side, but saw it as a way to push their message back into agriculture. Hey, we appreciate what you guys are doing. Last year the CN Tower got on board with some social media content. You think, what the heck is the CN Tower doing hanging on to Ag Day? Or CBC Toronto ran a whole little program in the morning about why agriculture matters, and that's not stuff we saw out of consumer media. You're a premier in Ontario. And so you start to see this engagement and the bleeding of social media side into your unusual suspects, football players getting on board. I think about Ricky Foley, who used to play for the Argos and he was out in Saskatchewan for a spell, and saying, hey, I was a farm kid, and now I'm a retired football player, and hey, this day matters, and putting a fun picture of him and a cow on his social channel. And what you really saw was just at a local level, we had a screening of a movie that Dylan Shear put together before the plate, became pretty popular, an Ontario story, getting all the classrooms and schools to run that movie out. And I don't think you can still watch that on a social channel right now or through YouTube, but if you haven't seen that one, watch it. So that was fun. We've done some of that. And this year, of course, we're not seeing the activities and the coffees and the cakes and the parties. But one of the events that jumped out at me is a couple. One was my old employer, Agribition, is doing a top 50 Canadian agriculture, I don't have the word right, but also influencers. And these are the researchers. These are the people that speak on behalf of the industry and people that make a difference. And they're publishing their list on that day. And I think it's pretty cool to have an international agriculture show like Agribition run a story on, hey, there's top 50 people that make a difference in Canadian agriculture. So look for that if you're listening to this podcast. The Canadian Cattlemen are doing, I think, something pretty cool. They've got a screening of the Guardians of the Grasslands. So once again, a short film that they're going to do. And you'll have to go to their website. I apologize, I can't tell you how to hit the link here, but go to the Canadian Cattlemen's and follow your way through. But they've got Coulter Wong. If anybody's been watching Yellowstone, popular shows right now, Coulter's featured singing a few songs in there, and he's got a real bluesy, raspy voice, good Saskatchewan young guy. They're going to do a little music and movie event that night. And so taking advantage of, hey, we're all at home, let's create some community and build our own ag day.
It's great to see something that it's a good news story. We so often we've been following and chasing the narrative here. And this has been a real opportunity for agriculture to set the narrative. And you're right. It's amazing who gets involved in it. It's not people that we necessarily, or corporations that we necessarily think would. Very vocal and very supportive of Canadian agriculture. And that's a great thing to have that kind of corporate push. It makes farmers feel a little bit better than, we're less than 1%. How do we get our voice heard?
Yeah. And I think if I've learned anything trying to help move the industry along in terms of how do we tell our story? How do we play in this public trust space? It takes the collective. And so part of Ag Day's success is that it pushes everybody to one day so you can be heard. There's lots of things happening throughout the year and they're localized and they work fine, but it's been super hard to get, the consumers of Canadian food to really see what we're up to. So one of the important pieces that we campaign this fall on February 23rd this year, and that's part of the recipe for success, and that's part of, I think, how you can break that echo chamber so that the average consumer in London, Ontario, just takes 1 second to pause and say, yeah, I'm grateful for the Canadian food system. I trust the food we have. In particular, I trust the people growing the food, and that's our outcome from Ag Day.
So if people want to access events and stuff and find out what's going on and what's available, how do they do that?
Yeah, I'd like to guide people to the website. It's kind of a catch-all you can go there and get collateral if you want to do an Instagram post. We've got some standardized images, links to register for our Ag Day virtual conference this year. That we've got actually Dominic Barton, the ambassador to China, and then a panel thereafter. We're talking, we've got AGT Foods, we've got Cargill, and then Bon Duell all speaking about where the opportunities are in Canadian food. All that's housed at cdnagday.ca. Go to the Ag More Than Ever website, find your way through to that, and then watch on social. There's going to be lots of increased awareness and advertising we're doing to try to make it easy for people to connect. But the biggest takeaway for me is this day doesn't belong to FCC. It doesn't belong to my team. It's the industry's day. And so the more creative people can be on what they want to do, and this year it's going to be mostly social media. If you can get creative do a little video, do a blog, which with a V, do anything you can that tells your story. Just use the hashtag CDNAgDay and it starts to thread it all together. And hopefully we can move the needle.
I'm looking forward to it. That's February 23rd. So that's coming up. Appreciate you spending some time with us to tell us all about Canadian Ag Day.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for listening to The Back 40. Join us next time when our guest will be Andrew Campbell, the Fresh Air Farmer, and we'll be talking how farmers can get their story heard by consumers. You've been listening to The Back 40, brought to you by Trillium Mutual Insurance. Be sure to subscribe to The Back 40 wherever you find your favorite podcasts so that you don't miss an episode. The Back 40, bringing the ag community together one podcast at a time. I'm Mike Brine. Until next time, take care and stay safe.